Thank you, Meredith. And the recording will be available for continuous interaction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moa, Daniel, for the opportunity given to me for me to lead out in this discussion at IACD. First of all, my name is Emmanuel Tawiah Tetteh. I work as the country director for Adventist Development Relief Agency, for short ADRA, the Gambia office. I have been in the community development profession for about 11 years now. I have a master's program in global community development from Southern Adventist University in the USA, Tennessee. And I'm currently also a law student, hoping to complete very soon. And so I have a lot of passion for legal issues when it comes to community development. First of all, helping community-based organizations and NGOs in fulfilling their legal obligations as they go about the business of helping various communities, and also more about helping communities get some kind of support or advocacy or other legal support that they need, because I also work with a lot of lawyers who have a great passion for deprived and less privileged communities. And so, yeah, that is a topic I would like to share my little knowledge with us. I know most of us here may have some knowledge when it comes to ethical and legal issues in community development. So I'll be waiting to also hear your contributions after my presentation is done, so that we can all learn together. So first of all, I would like to say that when it comes to community development, it's more about helping. But sometimes, even though we have the desire to help people, but we often end up hurting the communities and the people that we seek to help. We want to help. Yes, we have good intentions, but good intentions aren't enough by itself. Our intentions must be informed and backed by legal and ethical standards. If we have the intention to help communities, we have good intention to help people, we have very good intentions to bring about change, positive change and development in communities. But we must know that these intentions need to be done in a more professional, ethical, and a legal way, so as to protect us ourselves and also to protect the entities or the communities that we are working with. So the presentation, I will share an outline of how my presentation is going to be. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, so the presentation outline is kind of like this. I'll first talk about definition. I'll just try to give a general definition of what ethical and legal is all about. And then we will also talk about why ethical standards, why must community development be done in an ethical way. And we'll also look at the guiding standards as prescribed by IACD. We'll have a brief look at that. And then we'll look at the common ethical and legal issues or dilemmas in community development. There are so many of them, but I will be able to look at a few critical of them. And then we will also look at the importance or why community development should be done in a legal manner. So many organizations have ended themselves in legal troubles or problems just because of some issues that were not done properly. So we'll look at the importance of community development being done in a legal manner. And then, of course, we'll look at steps that we can take when we are faced with ethical and legal issues to make the right decision. So on the definition, next please. Yeah. So on the definitions, I would say, when we talk about legal and ethics or law and ethics, sometimes we can see that there is a very strong relationship between these two. And sometimes some people often use it interchangeably, but legal and ethical, or law and ethics, are not the same. In some scenarios, yes, they work together in a perfect balance and harmony, but in other scenarios, law and ethics drastically conflict with each other. So first of all, when we say something is ethical, what does it mean? Ethical means that it's something that adheres to a set of codes or values determined by a typical human perception of what is right and what is wrong. Normally, our ethics are informed by our conscience. It's informed by it's informed by various factors such as compassion, generosity, and kindness, and generally what we consider to be good or what we consider to be wrong. Whilst something that is legal is something that is permitted or obligated by the laws of the land, and things that are legal are just we are just obligated to do those stuff. So legal issues are often black and white. Normally they are written and then they're stipulated. So we are guided by those written ones. There is a popular statement by someone, I couldn't find the originator of this wonderful quote, but the quote says that the law sets a minimum standards of behavior, whilst ethics sets a maximum standard. And I believe this is very true because when we are talking about ethics, law most of the time informs our ethics, though there are some bad laws, but some of the ethical standards or guidelines that we have are often informed by some laws. But then ethics will go a bit higher so that at least we don't conflict with the laws. So as community development practitioners, we are often faced with situations concerning ethics and laws, which put us in serious dilemmas. And then we need to be able to find out what the way forward will be. Next, please. The IACD has a standard that guides community practitioners or its members. And there's a standard guide. I'm sure most of us have been or are aware of this standard guide. If we are not, I will very much encourage all of us to have access to this document. It is very, very good. And it talks about some of the things that we need to do. It talks about the values that should guide community development practitioners, values such as commitment to do right, solidarity, democracy, equality, environmental and social justice. And so we need to understand the guidelines that guides our work as community development practitioners by our mother association, which is the IACD. So the guideline identifies the purpose of professional community development practice and the values that should underpin practice and the key methods used by the practitioners. And when we go through the guidelines, it gives about 8 themes or 8 methods that we can do to help us with our community work. The first is value in practice. This means that whenever we are doing community development, we should be able to understand the values and the processes and outcomes of community development. And we should be willing to apply this into the practices that we are doing. And so our practices should be informed by certain values, certain principles. And those principles must guide what we do in the community. We also have the engage with community, which is a part of the standards in the IACD practice guideline. Engaging with the community, it's more about understanding and engaging with the community. It's about building and maintaining relationship with individuals and groups. When we are doing community development, it is not all about we having our own way, but it's about we engaging with the community making them feel part of it. And this takes us to the next one, what is participatory planning. We need to engage the community to collaborate with them so that they can feel part of what we are doing. If we are able to have this in our community work, it will really guide us and prevent us from a lot of troubles that many organizations and individuals face when it comes to community development. Then it also talks about organizing for change, which means that it's about enabling communities to take collective actions and increase their influence, access resources, and participate in managing and delivery services. We also have learning for change. It's about supporting people and organizations to learn together for social change. So we can see all these as some of the methods or the teams that IACD has put in place to guide community development practitioners. We can take our time to go through the document, and it will really be of a good advantage to us. Next slide, please. Why ethical standard? Why must community development be concerned about ethical standard? Most of the time, we may think that I just want to help a community, and so it's the help that matters. Or we need to be conscious of the fact that our help must be done in an ethical way. The importance of we doing that is that when we do community development in an ethical manner, number one, it assures us, that we remain in a good standing legally and professionally. This means that organizations and individual administrators may find themselves in legal trouble. For example, if they abuse clients or participants, or if they misuse or misappropriate money. In most situations, ethical and legal behaviors go hand in hand. And so when we are able to do our work in an ethical way, it assures that we remain in good standing in law, and we also remain in good standing professionally. We can be able to have the trust from the community and also from our various partners. Doing community development in an ethical standard helps cement our standing in the community. If we fulfill our ethical and legal obligations, and everyone knows that this particular organization or these individuals do community development in an ethical manner, our voices will have a greater impact in the communities that we work. When we speak, when the organizations speak, people will believe, or people will listen to us. So your voice will have a greater impact when you speak out for what you believe is right, or when you speak against what you believe is wrong, and others will follow you because they will see you as a professional entity or a professional individual. Ethical standard in community development also makes our programs more effective. Considering ethical principles in all aspects of our community intervention will lead us to finding the most effective and community-centered methods. Sorry about that. It will help us to be able to be more effective in community-centered methods, and it will bring dividends in participation, community support, and funding possibilities. So it will make our programs more effective because donors, community, the government, and everyone or every stakeholder know that we are sorry about that. Everyone will know that we are more a professional entity, and so it will have a positive effect on our programs. And also ethical standards will allow us to occupy the moral high ground. An organization that has a reputation for ethical action is far more likely to be respected and then to be trusted by both participants and the community as a whole. And so when we do our work in a more professional and ethical standard, we occupy a moral high ground. There are a lot of benefits for us to do our work in a more ethical way. It is good for us as the organization, and it's also good for us as individuals to stay away from troubles. The next slide, please. So I'll be talking about a few or common ethical and legal issues. When it comes to community development, one of the main ethical issues that most organizations find themselves in is confidentiality. All right, confidentiality, what does confidentiality mean? In practice, confidentiality is, it means that you cannot disclose personal information of client, either clients that you are currently working with or clients that you have worked with previously, without their explicit consent, unless there is another valid legal basis or requirement. As community development practitioners, we work with various communities, and in the process of our work, we are able to get a lot of data from the communities and the individuals that we work with. These informations can range from taking of their pictures, their videos, collecting of their personal informations, and so many other things that we get, especially when we are doing monitoring evaluation, research, or need assessment. We need to be able to ensure that whatever data or information we get from the community and individuals that we are working with are treated with confidentiality. And so it is important that we respect the people's privacy and to ensure that we don't disclose their information to a third party without their consent. The importance is that it helps protect the participants and the organization from invasion of privacy, and it also establishes a bond of trust between the participants and the program. I know sometimes we will see community development organizations, and I will be, my presentation is actually informed by my experience here in the Gambia working with community development and some of my little experiences outside. And sometimes you will see some community development practitioners making pictures or videos of clients, and all of a sudden the participants or the clients will see their images in places that they are not expecting to see their informations, and it becomes very, very disturbing. The point that we have to understand is that in Africa, one would say that issues of law, people don't actually follow much on issues of law, but there has been a lot of legal literacy, I would say, and people are becoming to know more about their rights. And so if we do not make sure we are doing things in the right way, we are opening up ourselves for future legal battles that can cripple our organizations or can put our reputation into a very bad one. So in all circumstances, ethical treatment of participants demand that they be informed about the program's confidentiality policy. Whenever we are drafting a project proposal or a program proposals and we are engaging the community, it is better we inform them if the program has any confidentiality policies. If it is not, at least we should try to develop something and let the participant know the extent of the information that we are collecting from them, how far with those information or those data go to. Let's go to the next slide, please. Another key ethical and legal issue in community development is informed consent. Informed consent, it's about informing a client of the purpose and risk, if any, of any services to be offered. When we are going to a community to do an intervention, the community need to know into details what that whole intervention it's all about. And when they have been informed of the intervention and its purpose, we need to obtain their consent
for their intervention, they need to agree that they want the intervention to be done in their community, or that they want to participate in the intervention. We also need to get their consent if we will need to collect any data from them. Sometimes one can say that informed consent by written, but it is best if we can get it in the form of written, especially when it has to do with some sensitive information that we will need to get from the community, and that may make them a bit uneasy for them to share those information with us. We really need to get their official consent. This can really save us from a lot of legal problems. I will be sharing some practical examples that I've encountered in my work in community development when it comes to this issue. So when it comes to informed consent procedure requires the community development practitioner to obtain client's permission, number one, before releasing confidential information to a third party. Even though the client may have informed you that you can share the information, but sometimes you will need to get a proper consent. Also, when it comes to photographing or videoing clients or participants, we need to get their consent. And in the presentation, I've put it in a dignified manner. You know, sometimes when it comes to community development, especially in the African standard, sometimes some practitioners want to get some sad stories, and they will get pictures of especially children who are naked or half dressed, and it doesn't portray them in a dignified way. The fact that the person is poor, is needy, doesn't mean that the person does not have some dignity to protect. So even when we are making photographs of people, when we are videoing them, at least it should be done in a dignified way. Sometimes we also take in media people, especially when we are doing project launching or inaugurations of project. We often take media, and then the media will just be videoing and collecting audio tapes from the clients that we have worked with. It is always important that we inform them before we allow the media or other professionals to collect whatever information we have from them. Before we employ or before we enroll a participant on a particular project that we are working with, it is very, very important that we get an informed consent from those individuals. And also permitting clients to participate as subject in research or evaluation, we need their consent. Next. You know, when it comes to informed consent, one can simply say that, well, I asked the person and the person was okay with it, so I make the picture or I shared the person's information to a third party. But then we need to be very careful with this kind of stuff, because sometimes we can say that I got a consent from a client or a community or a participant. And I know different countries have laws and regulations that vary in interpretation and application when it comes to informed consent standards. But generally, there are standards that have to be met before a consent that you have got can be considered valid. One of it is that the consent mustn't have gotten through coercion, trick, deceit, or undue influence. Sometimes when we are doing community development, we want to get some information from their details. And at the end of the day, the project does not materialize. We are not able to get the funding from them. And people waiting and waiting, and they will tell you that where this NGO came, and so some of these community people have the perception that NGOs take their pictures and use it to raise funds. And at the end of the day, they do not see the promises or the intervention that they promised them to do. Number two, informed consent forms and procedures must be valid. When it comes to this one, community development practitioners sometimes present clients with general and sometimes broadly worded consent forms. Those practitioners that work with consent forms, sometimes the forms have been used for the past 5 years, for the past 10 years, and it is one form that has been used over and over. Sometimes when we are getting consent from our clients, we need to be careful in making sure that the form that we are giving them is actually a valid form and it's specific to the consent or the type of consent we are trying to get from them. Number three, a client must have the capacity of providing consent. For example, when it comes to children, the law permits that, or most laws, especially in the common laws, say that children of certain age cannot have consent. And sometimes when we want to use certain information from children, we must get a consent from their parent or from their caregivers. Also, people who are mentally unstable cannot be considered to have the capacity to provide informed consent. Number four, a client must have the right to refuse or to withdraw consent. Practitioners should inform the clients of their rights and help clients make thoughtful and informed decisions based on all available facts and information about potential benefits and risks. And sometimes we often use some kind of threats, and we tell the clients that, well, if you are not able to provide this consent for me, then I'm not going to do it will be on for you. And so we must be able to respect the rights of the client. Next slide, please. Another issue is disclosure. When it comes to disclosure in community development, it is ethically important that participants know exactly what they are getting into. So here it's about informing the client about everything that they need to know when it comes to the intervention that we are giving to them. Some of the things that the clients need to know includes program policies of confidentiality and when it might be breached, what kind of services are available and what kinds of services are not available. Is there any time limit on the program or the project? What are the cost implications for clients? Sometimes we do projects or programs where the clients will have to sometimes participate financially or in other ways. So we need to be able to disclose everything to clients so that they will know what they're really getting into. In most project proposals, some donors will often ask for grievance procedure. Grievance procedure is key in development or in project development and implementation. Participants must be informed of any grievance procedures that is available. They must receive a copy of it, or it must be explained to them so that they can be able to file a grievance if there is a need for them to do so. Next slide. Competence. And this is a very big issue. Many people get into community development without any kind of competence. And they don't have the kind of training in community mobilization, project management, or the kind of services that are given to the community. All they have is just the money for them to be able to give whatever help they want to give to the community. But we must be careful that when we are doing community development, we must do that with the competence that we can give to them. The best of the interventions should be given to the community. There are legal implications when we do interventions with little or no competence. In fact, when it comes to certain cases, the licensing authority can withdraw a license. When it comes to government, I've seen the Gambia where some NGOs license have been withdrawn because of some kind of poor services they have given to some community. So when it comes to competence, it is very important to know that by offering services of any kind, an organization is essentially making a contract with the participants to do the job it says it will do. During the COVID crisis in the Gambia, there was an NGO or a community-based organization that was implementing a food distribution project. And they didn't know that part of the food that they were distributing have expired, and they gave it to the community. And some of the community's members consumed this and they got sick. It became a very big issue in the Gambia. Some media houses took the issue up. And so the issue was this: where was the competence of this organization in trying to know that what we are providing to the community is the best that we can give to the community? You know, in countries where people are very, very concerned with law, if this issue had gotten into the law court, that organization will have found itself on the wrong side of the law. The case was settled out of court, but it should guide us that whatever we are doing, when we are doing a borehole project for the community, it should be done in the right and a competent way to protect us and also to protect the communities that we are working with. Next slide. Conflict of interest is also a common ethical and a legal issue when it comes to community development. Conflict of interest is a situation where your personal, can be finance, political, profession, social, family, or other relationship issue or interest could influence your judgment or actions in carrying out your job in community intervention. There are so many times that individuals in community development organization have found themselves in conflict of interest. And we need to be able to guide ourselves against some of these things that can paint a very negative image about our organization and about the community development profession. When it comes to our part of the world, especially in the Gambia, so many communities are having a very negative perception when it comes to community development professionals, or what they say, NGOs. In fact, there was a time a former president was saying that he was going to close down what he called container NGOs. Everybody will just wake up and say that I form an NGO or that I'm a community development practitioner, and they are doing so many projects in communities that are shrouded with so many unethical and illegal practices. So when it comes to conflict of interest, for us to be able to avoid conflict of interest in our work, there are two remedies. When it comes to conflict of interest, or when we find ourselves involved in an issue that is of conflict of interest, we need to point it out to whoever needs to know. It can be our employer, it can be our donor or the community or the participant. We also need to eliminate the conflict situation. Depending upon the situation, solutions might involve excusing yourself from taking part in a particular decision making, refusing funding from a particular source, or ceasing to work with a particular community or participant if there is a very clear conflict of interest involved. Next slide, please. And then we come to some kind of grossly unethical behavior. This is a behavior far beyond the bounds of normally accepted ethical standards when it comes to community development, especially when you are community development practitioner working with some the community members, and then you begin to have sexual relationship with the people that you are working with. Sometimes you may consider that it's with consent, but it's a big problem that has affected so many people, and so many communities will actually have issues with you as an organization or as an individual when they find out that in your attempt to help them, we are actually engaging in some kind of a relationship, whether it's sexual or whatever, with the community members. The second important thing is defrauding donors. It's a very big issue, billing donors for non-existent services or inventing problems in order to deliver unnecessary service. It's a way that many people defraud donors from. Exploiting for financial gain. People with whom you have a professional relationship is also an unethical behavior, and discriminating especially in service delivery, just based on the person's race, gender, or ethnicity. Next slide, please. So when it comes to ethical, when it comes to one of the common ethical and legal issues, responsibility is also part. When we are into community development, we should know that we have a responsibility to the community that we are working with. We have a responsibility to the donors. We have a responsibility to the staff members. We have responsibility to the participants or to the clients that we are working with. Ethical behavior for community intervention is more than simply following particular profession code and keeping your nose clean. It means actively striving to do what is right for participants and for the community, and treating everyone, the participants, the donors, and whatever, in an ethical way. And by doing what you do in the community, you take on a number of responsibility, and these responsibilities must be discharged in an ethical and legal manner. Next slide, please. Whistleblowing is a major ethical issue. It is the reporting of waste, fraud, abuse, or corruption in an organization, and its intervention to someone who is in a position to rectify the wrongdoing. When we are into community development, in fact, in our part of the world, there are a lot of corrupt activities among community development practitioners. Some people, or most people, come into community development practitioner as a way of making money, and they really abuse donor funds. Funds that are supposed to go into helping people are actually abused. And so if you are in the midst of an organization where such things are happening, or either beneficiaries are being abused in any way, it is the responsibility of we, the practitioners, to be able to let the abuse or the corruption stop through whistleblowing. And that is giving confidential information to someone else who can be able to stop the practice. Community development best practice is that when feasible, the potential whistleblower should be first approached and the misbehavior colleague in an attempt to resolve the problem informally. But whilst whistleblowing may necessarily be important to protect clients and community organization, it also have a very powerful and harmful ramification. And when we are thinking of blowing the whistle on our colleagues or on our organization, we need to be able to ask ourselves a few questions. Next slide. And so before we blow the whistle, we need to find out what is my motive in blowing the whistle. How strong is the evidence of misconduct? The parties that we are trying to inform, do they have the capacity to stop the misconduct that is going on? Or are outside parties in a position to address the issue? Or will the whistleblowing result only in a toxic publicity and bruise the reputation of the individuals? We need to know that when we are blowing the whistle, and we do not do it very well, as individual or as an organization, we can open ourselves to defamation of character charges. This can be through libel or slander. Libel refers to the harmful written statement, and the slander is when the information is conveyed orally and it's actually not true. So before we blow the whistle, we must be very much convinced of the evidences available, and the motive should not just be to run down the organization, the individual, but to ensure that that practice is actually stopped. And yes, we must be sure that we are doing the right thing for the community and also for the organization. Next slide. Why should community development be done in a legal manner? If we are to do community development in a legal manner, it helps protect the organization and the individuals from legal consequences. I've seen, like I said earlier, so many NGOs who have been closed down in our country, and so many that has been engaged in so many legal battles just because of some things that they could have easily done to prevent this situation. The knowledge of the law provides practitioners with a practical understanding of their client's right and the responsibility. We must understand that the children that we work with, the community that we work with, the entities that we work with, they all have rights that must be respected. And if we as development practitioners do not know the rights of the people that we are working with, especially when it comes to children, women, and those issues, we'll get ourselves into a lot of problems. Community development practitioners with greater knowledge of the law are more effective in meeting the needs of their clients and communities. And when we know the law and also that the laws are not favorable, as a development practitioner, we can advocate for a change of draconian laws in our communities. But then if we don't know the law, then how can we advocate for the right laws to be put in place to help protect people, and especially the vulnerable people that we work with? Next slide. When it comes to making ethical and legal decisions, there are 7 steps, or 7 general steps that I want to share with us. The first step is that before you make a legal or ethical decision, we must first identify the ethical or the legal issues, including the community development values and ethics that surrounds the conflict. So number 1 is to identify the issue. Then number 2 is to identify the individuals or the groups or the organizations that will be affected by the legal or the ethical decision that we are going to make. Who will be affected by the decision that I am going to take? You also need to state the possible courses of actions that the participants involved will either possibly benefit or be at risk for. So when you have identified the issue, identified the people or the group that may be affected, you need to also identify all the possible courses of actions and the participants involved in each of them. Number 4, we need to thoroughly examine the reasons in favor of or opposed to each possible course of action. If you are going to take, well, we first need to state all the various actions that we can possibly take on that dilemma. And then we need to be able to know the pros and cons of each of these actions. And then we need to be able to consult with colleagues and appropriate experts, such as our agency staff, supervisors, agency administrators, attorneys, ethical scholars, and ethics committees. It is important that we do not take ethical or legal decisions alone, especially when we are not sure of what to do. We need to consult. And number 6, we need to make the decision and document the decision-making process after we have got the advice from the appropriate experts. And then we need to monitor, to evaluate, and to document the decision. And if the decision was not right, so that the next time we'll be able to vary the decision that we had taken. Next slide, please. So in concluding, I know our time is far spent. In concluding, I will say, when it comes to ethical issues, because these issues are not always cut and clear, community programs should work out their own ethical and legal guidelines and policies, especially before questions actually arise. Most community development professionals or community development organizations work without policies that guides them. It is important that we work with policies. And when it comes to policy making, we can have policies on confidentiality, conflict of interest, and disclosures, and all many things. But when it comes to policy making, what I've seen, especially in the Gambia, for many community development organizations, is that they just do copy and paste. We go to, for example, Kenya, see what an organization there is doing, and then we just copy it into the Gambia, not knowing that maybe the legal systems of these two countries may be different. So we need to be able to put into consideration our legal systems so that it can be able to inform our policies that we will be making. When we are able to put in place these policies, it will really help us to uphold the standards, and then we are possibly on our way to community respect and outstanding service delivery to the community. Thank you all so much for your kind attention. And I know I went beyond my time, sorry about that. I will leave it over to you, Meredith and Dr. Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel. Can we give you a round of applause for a job well done? Thank you very much, and giving us all these details from the ethical and also the legal perspective. Now we are better informed how to be legal and equally how to be ethical. We have just about 8 minutes to the hour. I will open the forum for any interventions. As I indicated right from the start, I'm seated outside in some training institution where there's quite a bit of activity, but that's the flexibility of community development. Just unmute yourself and go if you have an intervention. Yes, Jim, you can go.
Yes, two things just to contribute to the discussion. Daniel, I was quite interested in some of the slides where Emmanuel uses the word client. And it's very interesting that from my tradition of community development, then client is one of these words that's is partly legal and in some senses maybe less than democratic. We would try to find some kind of language that allows us not to use the term client in terms of the work. And the second aspect, which is slightly different, but I welcome a comment on, is how do you nurture dissent? How do you nurture dissent? And in terms of in the UK, then children at school, I think, are discouraged from learning the skills of dissenting, of just saying, well, let's think about that in a different way, dissent in a positive way. So it was interesting that dissent didn't feature, as something that community development might wish to encourage in an acceptable way. So this, to me, bridge this area between the legal things and the value aspects, ethical things. So anyway, just a immediate reflection to a very, very interesting and helpful input. So thanks very much for that, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Jim. Maybe I can attempt to respond to the first one on behalf of Emmanuel. As community development practitioners, we come from different backgrounds, and Emmanuel is a trained lawyer. And so most of the time from his training, there is that kind of divide. Clients and becomes a common term in his vocabulary. But of course, I want to assume when he's working with communities, then he downplays the aspect of client. But I want just to clarify, he's coming from the legal background where the people they interact with are more of clients. But of course, I believe he also works with now communities, not as clients, but in the process of trying to make their lives better. But Emmanuel, over to you. But before Emmanuel comments, maybe there is another intervention.
Hello, Daniel. I don't know. Can I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to thank you and Jim for the observation of the client. In fact, when I was making my presentation, I was actually trying to look for the appropriate word. And I remember we've had a few discussions on what is the best word we can use to address that people that we are working with in the community. Sometimes some people use participants or beneficiaries. and other things. But sometimes also when we see them, these are so to say, in the legal profession, clients or people that we are actually working together, so that we don't actually or only see them to be as just benefactors of the community. So I really had time in trying to get the appropriate term to describe people that we work with. But thank you so much for that observation, and it's well noted.
Any comment on the next component? How do we nurture dissent, which is still a useful component of empowerment in communities, so that then we don't become so straitjacketed so that we don't even now start questioning even situations that are disempowering. That's an open question. Emmanuel can comment, but also all of us as practitioners can also comment.
Yes, in fact, that is a very important issue. Nurturing this kind of dissent in our organization, especially so many people try to prevent people from speaking contrary to what we hold to be true, and especially even with the community people that we work with. And that is why we should, I talked about the issue of a grievance procedure. If you are working with people, we should be able to give them the opportunity to be able to express their grievances. And so in many projects, there is the need for the community members to be aware that they have a procedure to express their grievances. And these grievances can often be dissent. Maybe they don't agree with a particular way that we are doing a particular activity in the project or in the program. But then when we don't give them the opportunity for grievance procedure, then whatever grievances or dissent that they have will be within them. And that is why it is important that while we are planning and implementing the project, it is important that we outline the grievance procedures for the community and even for the office. There is a need for grievance procedures in the office. Our staff should be able to express themselves. We should be able to give them the opportunity, and they should be protected. Whilst you are giving the grievance procedure, there should be also ways in which the people will feel protected, so that they will not feel that they will be disadvantaged or be punished for expressing their grievance or their dissent on an activity that the organization or the practitioner is doing.
Thank you, Emmanuel. On the first one about you're talking about clients, there are cases where the community becomes a client if they are coming to consult you, but equally there are also cases where the communities are more of partners. You are working with them because they have just as much stake as you have in what is being worked on. And so at that point, you are all stakeholders and you are all partners in the process. And increasingly, we are talking about co-designing and also co-production of community development processes and outcomes. And so increasingly then, how we label each of the component, the segments of communities we are working with, of course, going to be dynamic depending on the situations where we find ourselves in. As a change, as a community practitioner, again, there are times you are going to be an advisor, you're going to be a facilitator. And so that way, then now you hold a slightly upper hand at that point in time. Of course, the issue of dissent is very important. As you go to the Freirean model of conscientization, one of the things that needs to be developed is the aspect of the critical consciousness. So that we can become aware, but in a very critical manner, so that then we can question the realities that we inhabit and the realities that lead us to the situation where we find ourselves. And so it's an important aspect that as facilitators of community development, then we also lead communities to critically evaluate their situations and then ultimately question them. That could, of course, requires a bit of dissent, because again, if a group thing comes in, then we don't go very far. We all start thinking as one, and that can be very disempowering, so to speak. So any further intervention? Now we're coming to the end of our time. Any further intervention? So there being no further comment, then I think we bring this to a close. Appreciate ourselves with a loud of applause. And then we can convene again on the 12th of next month for another, again, masterclass this time, where now we can be taken deeper into some more serious teaching, just the way Emmanuel has taken us. Thank you very much for making time for this webinar, the 16th edition.